Hi everyone, welcome to the part of the course where we are now talking about the common tactics that exist in the dragon. Now, when I was learning the dragon quite some time ago, I also wanted to find these common tactics, and the number one resource that helped me is this course right here. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be referencing this course in this video, and this is kind of just going to be a small preview of this course. And so what I recommend you do is purchase it. It's on Chessable. I'll leave a link, of course, in the description. And the way it works is it's split into two parts. First, there is, when it loads, the key tactical themes, which are just informational lines that talk to you about the common motifs that exist. We're going to be looking at some of these in the video today. And then there's 108 examples and exercises that basically put what you're going to be learning in the video today and in this chapter here. If you buy the course, they're putting that stuff in action, and you're going to get some chances to practice it. And so what I recommend is you watch this, and if you're wanting more, if you want to test what you just learned and see 100 examples, then this is a wonderful resource. Once again, I'll leave a link in the description. And so let's now go ahead and look at some of the key lines. I selected 6 that I thought were really instructive and quite beautiful. And so the first one is the one you see on the screen right now. And this is a perfect example for this course that I'm making here specifically because we've developed exactly how I'm recommending. The bishop comes to e6, which is what I'm recommending in many of these lines, as opposed to putting the bishop on d7, which is more common. The queen comes to a5, one of the rooks lands on c8, and everything else is normal. This is a position that is really likely something that you could encounter in your game. And here, there's a wonderful blow. Knight takes g4, and after pawn takes, rook takes c3. You often combine many sacrifices, and material just doesn't matter when you have so many pieces. Looking at the king, you can give away some of these pieces. So by giving away the knight, you open up the bishop. By giving away the rook, you're going to open up the king. If they take with the queen, of course, they just blunder their queen. You take it, and it's game over. And taking with the pawn will lead to mate in just 2 moves. So a really simple, once you see it, but beautiful example, and you always should look at this. When you've developed everything, one plan would be to start pushing these pawns, but always look, if all of your pieces are truly in the game, there's cases where you just need your pieces in this opening. You're not even going to need the B pawn. You just need all of your pieces in the game. So this was one really common and beautiful tactical motif. Here is another one. And once again, we have a position that is super likely to be something you see. Here, instead of developing to the more critical c4 square, they developed to d3. That doesn't bother us. We put the bishop on e6 anyways, and we're super happy on this long diagonal. Everything else is just as you would see with all the pieces coming in. And once again, pushing the pawns is a common plan in these sort of positions, but tactics are always in the air when all of your pieces are developed like this. And here, the beautiful blow, rook takes c3, which is really surprising, admittedly, because it can be captured 3 ways. But the idea is the knight is now removed. That is the key idea, making this square really, really weak. And I mean, whatever they do, we'll observe each one. If bishop takes, then there's mate in 2. If pawn takes, and then there's also basically the same mate. And the critical line is queen takes. And here we see a second motif, not only sacrificing the rook, which is really common, you already saw it twice, but also using your bishop in a really surprising way. Most people put the bishop on g7 and are scared to touch it for the rest of the game. They think that the bishop is perfect here and we shouldn't even look at moving it. But often this h6 square is really powerful. And there's cases where, I mean, here we're just delivering checkmate with the bishop, but there's cases where, you know, there's a pin here, maybe you drag away the queen and then give checkmate, things of that nature. So always look at using your bishop in this nice diagonal here. It's checkmate because, of course, when they block, it's mate on a1. So another very beautiful sacrifice with the rook, and then activating the bishop via h6. Now we can move on to a third example. And this one is also incredibly practical for the way that I'm recommending you play this, because look at the pawn structure. This is exactly something you might see, because as I showed in the theory-based chapters, if you watch those, we like to develop the bishop here and allow them to take and give us this pawn structure, because now we get this really nice open f-file. So this is something that is super possible that you might see in your game. The queen developed normally, the rook here is really active, looking to either stack or, as the opponent allowed them, activate it in a very beautiful manner. Knight takes e4 here, simply wins. If you take with the if you take on g7, of course you lose your queen, so that's out of the question. But if you take with the pawn, then suddenly rook takes d4. The rook is really active on c4. Not only, and this is actually something also to note, don't try to stack your rooks by going to c7 or c6. Put it on this really active square on c4. It might seem a little weak there, maybe it can be hit or something, but that's not going to typically be an option. We can always push b5 to defend it if need be, and here the rook is just a lot more active than it would be on c6, and this is the evidence for that. Knight takes e4, as I showed. They can't take with the bishop. F takes, we win the bishop back, and if they take with the knight here, then after this trade, we get into just a really comfortable endgame where we're up a pawn. But even more than that, I would argue one of the key features of this position, which makes it winning, is this pawn structure that gives this rook an open file. Here we see a direct reason why this f3 pawn is so weak. They have to play an ugly move like rook f1. They don't want to do this. They want to activate the rook somewhere here, for example, putting it on e1, but then f3 hangs, and that's not possible for them to do. And here, after a move like e5, and we can very comfortably put the bishop on this safe square, because again, they can't go here because f3 hangs, we're just totally winning. The bishop is better than the knight, and the rook, of course, is much better than its counterpart as well, with the potential idea of going d5 and e4 and taking advantage of the pin. Once again, this f-file is a huge winning factor in many of these positions when they end up taking on e6. And I really like this part, part of the masterclass, because everything's coming together. The theory and the positions that you get, you can kind of see how they can end up later in the game with these nice tactical combinations. Now here we see a dragon that went perfectly for black. White does have its fair share here of attacking possibilities on the king side, sure, but just look at these rooks. I mean, we are totally dominating. And this is exactly the sort of position that you want to be looking for tactical motifs. And it just happens that rook takes b2 wins on the spot. After rook takes, queen takes, it is simply mating. So here you lined up all your pieces really well. You launched your b-pawn and got the open file, which is one of the big benefits of launching the b-pawn. You put all your pieces on the open file. I like this one here especially because this is also a common maneuver in many positions, getting the rook over to a6. Another thing to keep in mind, and just all your pieces are in the game. The queen, as always, on a5. And here is tactic number 5. We have this one and then one more after this, and this one I thought was extra special because this is showing the true nature of the dragon. Look at white's attack here. If you play a random move, then it's checkmate for white, either on h8 or taking on f7 mate. And this is typically the position you're going to get. If you have nothing, then it's game over. But very often you're going to have something, and very often, as in this case, your attack comes quicker than your opponent. And here, rook takes c2, king takes c2, and now queen to c4 just wins. The king is too exposed here, just intuitively, but also not that hard to calculate that this is going to be checkmate. So it's always these double-edged positions that you're going to need to think really critically about and find these winning moves, because otherwise, once again, it's going to come checkmate in the other direction. So I like these sort of double-edged positions, and this is what you have to be prepared to play, and you have to really try to find these beautiful combinations, and that is something that practice will help you. So this is the final tactic here. Again, something super possible that you will see. I mean, the knight came to e5, which is a really logical square. They pushed their pawns, clearly a weakness on f3, and although our bishop does come to d7 instead of e6, here it is irrelevant. We have still this open b file. The queen is yet to develop, but as you're going to see, that is not an issue here. We have the beautiful strike knight takes f3, and after knight takes e4. And again, double sacrifices. Often you sacrifice a piece and you try to find the winning move here, kind of a solid move that just wins on the spot. But sometimes you're going to have to be comfortable trying to calculate another sacrifice and only then finding the winning combination, because in these dragon positions there's so many pieces on the board that once again it's fine to sacrifice 1, 2, even sometimes 3 in order for your other ones to win you the game. So knight takes f3, knight takes f3, now we take on e4, and if they move their queen, of course, we win back the material with interest, the rook falling here on d1, and if they play knight takes e4, then the magic really happens with rook takes b2. The king, of course, comes to c1, and now a magnificent blow. We, of course, would much prefer this to be a queen instead of a rook, so we give away the rook and now bring our queen into the action, and it's game over. If they move to c1, then mate in 1 is possible, and if they instead try to block with their queen to open up the position, we're not only taking the queen, but here it's just mating as well. So a very nice position. We sacrifice a pair of knights to activate this beautiful dragon bishop, something you've seen multiple times now. So once again, I highly recommend you get this course here. Again, I'll leave it in the description. I showed you just a small bit of the instructional variations, kind of the common tactics, but if you actually want to get comfortable in this opening in the tactical sharp positions, then going through these 108 exercises really serves you well. So I'll leave this in the description. I think it's only $8, so not that bad, and you can get this done in a day or two. It's also quite enjoyable, I found. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Stay tuned for the final episode of this masterclass, where we will look at the model games that ties everything together, and I will see you next time. Peace out.